Okay, so up to this point in our lecture sequence, we said we were going to break it down into four fundamental units, four core units that defines uh, software design and development, uh, especially when we start examining some of the requirements that will be expected upon you from like a professional or industry level understanding. And so the first unit was to discuss proper code management strategies. The second unit was to discuss proper data management strategies, at least for the in-memory uh, 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 data for your application. So the third unit that we're now going to start discussing is going to be the IO management, the input-output management, the ability to get data into your application and then to get the data back out of your application. And so that's where we're going to start talking about today. And then the final unit will be the user interface management. But today and in the short-term future, we're just going to now do a deep dive into IO management, especially as it relates to Java. So in this first set of slides, I just want to do a very quick overview of what to expect across this unit, and then we'll start digging into a more detailed analysis and a more explanatory overview or review of each of the classes that we'll need to be able to appropriately do all the IO related tasks we'd ever want to do in Java. So a quick interview is just going to be a quick introduction into what is Java IO, and we'll take a quick gander at the Java IO classes and interfaces. So here, Java IO, again, short for input and output, is a process of reading data from a source and writing data to a destination. So if we were to look at these, the diagram here, you can see that examples of input sources that we read data to a program would be things like the keyboard or the mouse, or it could be some data in memory, or it could be some data on the hard drive or some disk, or it could be some data that is from another networked machine. Right, so all of those are viable input sources that we might want to open up on our Java application to be able to import so that we can use. And then all of the output destinations, we might want to be able to send data out. We might want to write data out from our Java application, might be like the screen on the monitor, or it could be like a printer for a printout, or it could be data that you're sending back out to memory that could be used by some other application, or it could be you could output it to a disk in the form of like a file, or you can send it across the network through JSON or some other way of serializing that data to send that it can then be consumed by some other application or another program. So there's a ton of different concepts that relate into what it means to have input and output, and what is the entity giving us input, and what is the entity that we're depositing our data out from. And we're going to take a big deep dive into learning how to use all of these, or how we could do that from Java's perspective. So the Java language introduces a rich set of IO classes and interfaces in its core API, mostly in the java.io package. And so the IO classes defined by Java IO, there's multitudes. And so actually this spans across two different slides, and we'll eventually cover most, if not all of these, but just to give you an idea, just to give you an overview of what we'll cover, we'll look at input streams. And so input streams is an abstract class that has many concrete classes, as you can see. An output stream, just like input stream, is an abstract class that has many different concrete classes. We also have readers and writers, which, similar to the output and input streams, have many different concrete classes that implement it. So we'll cover what is the distinction between an input stream and a reader, an output stream and a writer. And then on top of all of these concrete classes that implement these input stream, output streams, readers, and writers, There's also some of these like utility classes that help with the responsibilities of the IO tasks that we need to do. And that might be things like console that allows us to go ahead and display into the JVM console, or stream tokenizer that allows us to take a stream and tokenize it into individual units that can be parsed, or all the file utilities where we can create a file class or have a file descriptor object or a file permission object, or things that are used for serialization, like an object stream class or an object stream field or a serializable permission class. And we'll talk more about what all these do over the course of this unit. And then those are just the classes. On top of that, there's a number of different interfaces that these classes will implement off of. And again, we'll talk about the importance of each of these as we cover them. So, but effectively it'd be like closable and data input and data output, externalizable or a file filter, file name filter, flushable, serializable, object output or input. All these will be things that we're going to cover over the course of this unit. So that's just a quick overview to give you an idea of where we're going with this unit before we feel we can move on to the final unit in the semester. And so once we cover all these concepts, you should be familiar enough then with the way that Java handles IO, that no matter what the data source or the data sink is, you'll be comfortable being able to pipeline that in and set it up in an application. Okay, with that said, does anyone have any questions in terms of just the overview of what this unit is about?